In Janglish, a scene of birth has been created from fire. Is this not some form of retribution? In the forests of California, fire created an apocalyptic scene, and the raging flames burned everything down. The city of dreams has been destroyed. Could the recent wildfires in California be a form of retribution from God? The devastation we're witnessing today, could it be the result of our sins or injustices? This wildfire, which is becoming more intense every year, has not only destroyed the natural environment, but has also put countless lives in danger. Hundreds of homes have turned to ashes, and thousands of people are now homeless. But are these just natural disasters, or is there another reason behind them? When we reflect on this, it becomes essential to consider whether we have been disrespecting nature. Have we misused the natural resources that we should have been protecting? This fire may not just be a natural calamity. It could be a sign of how we have neglected our land and environment. When we connect it with the idea of retribution, it raises the question of whether this is God's wrath. The way we treat our environment, doesn't it have consequences? The scale and spread of this fire have forced people to consider whether this could be the result of our actions. People are now forced to think, could this be retribution? This way, your message is more detailed and poses a deeper question, compelling others to reflect on the situation. 118,000 people have become homeless. Do you remember the American actor who once made the statement about erasing Gaza from the face of the earth? This person, who spoke words that reflected not only cruelty, but also the destruction of humanity, caused a worldwide stir. He made light of the suffering of the people of Gaza, playing with their fate. But today, this very individual finds himself facing a devastating consequence. His own house is burned to the ground, and his entire business, once thriving and successful, has crumbled into ruin. The man who once mocked the pain of others is now feeling the weight of that same pain in his own life. This moment should serve as a wake-up call. A person who toyed with the lives of others today finds himself helpless before the will of Allah. It's a reminder that the power of God is quiet, but it's undeniable. When God decides, his retribution arrives swiftly and justly, and no one can escape it. Every action has its consequences, and the reckoning for those actions happens sooner or later. This situation is not confined to this one individual alone. It offers a profound lesson to all of us. It teaches us that no one has the right to tamper with another's fate. Destroying someone's life, mocking their suffering, or playing with their destiny is an act deeply displeasing to Allah. And when such acts occur, the results, though delayed, will inevitably catch up. Today, the very person who once spoke of causing destruction to others is now himself facing destruction. This should make us reflect on the nature of our own actions. People today are forced to ask themselves, is this not a form of retribution? Is this person, who toyed with the fate of others, now suffering the very consequences of his actions? Is there any human power that can stand against the will and retribution of Allah? These questions are circulating in the minds and hearts of many, reminding us that nothing in this world happens by mere chance. Every action has a reaction, and the will of God prevails above all. This is why we must always think carefully before we act, because God's judgment is the final and most powerful force in this world. No one should mock or make light of anyone's destruction or suffering, nor should anyone think of causing pain to others. It is a person's duty to share in the pain of others, and if they are fortunate enough to be in a position of strength or success, they should be grateful to God, not boastful or arrogant, thinking of themselves as equals to God. The wealth and power that a person gains can sometimes deceive them into thinking they are above others, but this is only a fleeting illusion, because true power and authority lie with God alone. We must remember that everything that happens in life is by God's will and decree. When a person attains wealth, fame, or power, they might, for a moment, think they are invincible, believing they are above others. But this is a temporary deception, revealing only their weakness of mind. If a person believes themselves equal to God, they become powerless in the face of their own fate, for God's authority is supreme, and when he decrees, no one can oppose it. We all need to understand that every hardship, trial, or test from God is an opportunity, a chance for us to reflect on our actions and better ourselves. Taking pleasure in someone else's destruction or suffering or mocking their fate is against God's law. Every person's journey is different, and the one who is prosperous today might face hardship tomorrow. We should never rejoice in the suffering of others, because the pain we fail to empathize with today might very well knock on our door tomorrow. God has commanded us to help each other, to care for one another, and to share in each other's pain. If we look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, he always served humanity and taught his companions that the pain of one is the pain of all. Consider the example of Caliph Umar ibn Khattab R.A., who, during his reign, treated the public as his brothers and sisters. He never ignored anyone's suffering and always thought that if one person was in hardship, the whole society was in hardship. This is the mindset we must adopt if we wish to be in the path of God's will. When we seek to grow our wealth, power, or status at the expense of someone else's suffering, we might invite God's wrath upon ourselves. No one should feel proud of their current status, because everything is temporary. Every trial and hardship sent by God holds a lesson for us. God wants us to recognize our true nature and be humble. No human can ever be so powerful that they are exempt from God's decree, and no one has the right to rejoice in someone else's pain. We must always remember that God's will and decisions are final. For instance, take the life of Prophet Joseph, who was wronged by his brothers, thrown into prison, and later rose to greatness by God's decree. His story teaches us that circumstances can change, and God's decree can alter anyone's life. If a person accepts the hardship or calamity in their life as God's will and patiently endures it, it will bring peace and blessings to their life. Another example is that of Prophet Ayyub Job. Prophet Ayyub endured countless hardships for the sake of God's will, but God rewarded him with innumerable blessings in the hereafter and restored his health and wealth in this world. This teaches us that every trial holds divine wisdom, and that enduring hardship with patience for God's sake should be our goal in life. We must always remember that whatever our condition is, it is from God, and God's decisions are always for our good. We should strive to live our lives in pursuit of God's pleasure and never rejoice in someone's destruction or suffering. We need to understand that every person's experience is different, and that their every day unfolds according to God's will. If we all unite and make an effort to stop injustice, we can save ourselves from God's further wrath. Some people think that what they do doesn't matter, that they are safe, and their actions only affect them. They believe that whether they fight or not, whether they live or die, it doesn't make a difference. But this mindset is completely wrong. If my neighbor's house catches fire, the heat and smoke from it will reach me too. I can't escape it, no matter what my own situation is. We must understand that we are all connected, and our fates are intertwined. If we remain silent in the face of someone else's suffering, if we ignore injustice, we become part of it. Our indifference could be the reason that injustice ultimately reaches our own lives. If we think that we are safe and that what happens to others won't affect us, we are deceiving ourselves. Actions that go against God's will can never remain without consequence, and if we ignore the injustice around us, it will eventually touch us. If we stay silent today, tomorrow that very injustice will knock on our door. Now is the time for us to stand together, to fight injustice, to serve humanity, and to realize that as long as we don't intervene and stop the suffering of others, we will not be spared from its effects. When we remain silent in the face of others' pain or fail to speak out against injustice, we are inviting punishment from God's law upon ourselves. God's will can never be avoided, and those who think they are unaffected are turning a blind eye to the truth. In another person's pain, we all feel pain. If we ignore someone else's suffering, we cannot escape its repercussions. This is a moment for us to reflect. If we do not stand up against injustice now, it will soon be at our door. We are all connected, and the suffering of one is the suffering of all. If we do not speak out against oppression, we too will bear its consequences. Once, in a small village, there lived a man named Usman. Usman had a kind heart, but he believed that his actions didn't affect anyone else. He would often say, "What does it matter? We are small people, and whatever we do, it doesn't make any difference to the world." Usman lived a carefree life, ignoring the struggles of others. In the same village, there was another man named Rahmat. Rahmat was a poor farmer, but his heart was soft, and he always tried to help others. He often tried to explain to Usman that we should pay attention to the state of the people around us, because we are all interconnected. One day, Usman decided to build a large building near the village. He bought up all the land and brought in heavy machinery to construct the building quickly. The villagers were concerned because the construction of the building was destroying the environment and the beauty of the area. Rahmat approached Usman and warned him that the construction would not only harm the environment, but also weaken the land in the long run. Usman dismissed Rahmat, saying, "Why are you bothered? It's my land, my money, and I don't need to worry about anyone else." Rahmat replied, "You may not understand now, but just because nothing is happening to you today doesn't mean it won't affect you tomorrow." However, Usman ignored his advice and continued with the construction. A few months later, a violent storm struck the village. The intensity of the storm caused significant damage to Usman's building, and the land he had bought became submerged in water. All of Usman's hard work, money, and time went to waste. On the other hand, Rahmat's fields remained safe because he had taken good care of the land and respected nature's forces. Usman realized how wrong his thinking had been. He approached Rahmat and apologized, saying, "I never thought that my actions could have consequences for me too. I ignored your advice, but now I understand that we shouldn't overlook the suffering of others." Rahmat replied, "This is the law of nature, my friend. What you do to others comes back to you." Usman learned from his mistakes, and from that day on, he never ignored the pain of others. His life changed, and he started working with the villagers to protect the environment. This story teaches us that whatever we do has consequences, and it doesn't just affect others, it affects our own lives too. If we turn a blind eye to the suffering of others or act selfishly, that same selfishness may one day come back to harm us. We must always be considerate of others' pain, because we are all connected. What we do to others eventually happens to us. Today, let's talk about real-life fate, which is connected to human actions and divine will. This is not a story or a fictional concept, but the reality that is a part of our daily lives. No matter how hard you work or how honestly you try, if something else is written in your fate, that's what will happen. This is something every person must understand at some point in life. There are many people in the world who have worked extremely hard, followed the right path, and tried to improve their lives, but still, they didn't get everything they wished for. On the other hand, there are people who don't put in much effort or follow the wrong paths, yet fate still favors them, and they end up getting something out of life. All of this is part of God's will, something we can't always understand, but with time, we come to realize the wisdom behind it. For example, there's a person who has worked honestly his whole life, supported his family, and helped others, but still faces financial difficulties. Then there's another person who hasn't worked as hard, took advantage of others' weaknesses, but fate opens the door of wealth for him. It's all part of God's plan. What happens in our lives, He knows better than us, and His decisions are always in our best interest. Whatever we do, the results always align with His will. Our efforts, honesty, or good intentions never go to waste, and no bad actions remain unpunished. This is the infinite wisdom of God that manifests in our lives. Whatever we get is in accordance with our fate and God's will. Therefore, we should be mindful of our actions, strive to improve our lives, but always place our faith in God's will and understand that whatever happens is according to our fate and His will. The truth is, we cannot escape fate, and whatever we do, it impacts not just our lives, but the lives of those around us. Therefore, we should live according to God's will, accept whatever happens, and move forward with patience and faith. What happened in Gaza is not just an event, but it points to a larger truth. Many religions teach that whatever we do has an impact on the world around us. If we remain silent in the face of oppression or injustice, if we deviate from the principles of humanity, the consequences will eventually catch up with us. This reality draws our attention to the fact that we should not limit our religious beliefs to mere acts of worship, but we should act on them by promoting justice, humanity, and love in the world. As long as we continue to ignore the suffering of others, as long as we fail to adopt the right values in our lives, we will continue to face the consequences that confront us. What is happening in Gaza reminds us that no nation can succeed without the will of God. We must reflect on our actions and think about where we stand. Are we among those raising their voices against oppression, or are we silent bystanders? This is the time to translate our beliefs into reality and work towards making this world a better place, so that we and the generations to come can live in peace and tranquility. We must understand that everything that happens is a result of our actions, and we should strive to improve our lives by recognizing the effects of those actions. Like this channel, subscribe, comment, and don't forget to share. A small effort, a good deed, or a positive message from us can change someone's life. And if, because of us, even one person finds a path to guidance, it is a success for all of us. We must understand that it is our responsibility to improve others' lives through our words and actions. When we guide someone to the right path, when we ignite a spark of hope in someone's heart, that is a victory for our spirituality and humanity. All of this is part of the law of karma, because what we do eventually comes back to us. If we help someone, Allah rewards us with His help. If we share in someone's sorrow, we find peace and contentment in our hearts. This is not only our responsibility, but also an action that brings us closer to Allah's will. We should never forget that this world is not just for us. It is for everyone. Every action we take, every step we make, affects others. That's why we should always act thoughtfully. If even one small act from us becomes a beacon of light in someone's life, it will be the greatest success for us. So, let's all understand our responsibility, help one another, and try to make this world a better place. Because when we do good, it benefits not just us but the entire society. Whatever we do, one day will come back to us and remind us of what we have done. And this is the law of karma.